Music for me has been extremely therapeutic, and if it wasn't for a particular band, Linkin Park, I wouldn't be here today. Their music through Chester's lyrics have completely changed my life, and I find when you're going through a dark period, you need to process those emotions, not to ignore them, not to escape, and I'm a number one for escaping. I'll happily have drink or smoke to get away from that feeling. But if you sit with that emotion and you process that emotion, you're with it at that time, and then it's got nowhere else to go. It's not going to harbour illness in your body later on along the life. You're going to process it, you're going to deal with it, and you're going to move on, and you're going to be stronger because of it. And music gives me that channel. So, thank you for your time. And I am living proof that if you apply these into your lives, you can have the life that you dream of and you deserve. And if you've got any questions, because I imagine I've condensed this down, like my husband was like, it's about a 30-minute talk. So we'll see. I've done well. I'm not terrible. But yes, peace and love to you all.
Bless her, that was so lovely. Thank you, Selena. That was beautiful, and I'm sure it touched a lot of people. Emotional stuff, this. Our third speaker, where is she? She's hiding. It's lovely Ruth Bennett. Now, bear with me, because this girl does a lot of stuff, so hang on. Deep breath. Ruth helps students with learning difficulties. She's done acting. She's a tarot and angel healing. She was part of Norfolk Says No campaign, and she wrote a play called No More. She's a life coach, an NLP practitioner, if I say that, the other two lines, a clinical hypnotherapist, a Reiki healer, a survivor. She sees the best in people, and I met her when she came to an angel workshop of mine 4 years ago now, was it? And I couldn't she just lit up the whole room, and I know that she's going to do that to you today as well. So can you please welcome the amazing Ruth Bennett.
Thank you, Katie. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm Ruth. I've come all the way from Thetford today on the train, so I can have a glass of wine on the way back again. Okay, so when Katie first actually messaged me to say, Ruth, I'd like you to be a part of the event, I thought she was inviting me to come and watch an event. And then I read it again and went, she actually wants me to speak. And then it said you've got about 15 minutes. Thought, does she know that my name is Ruth? What is brevity, Bennett? And so I'm going to keep an eye on the clock and keep an eye on my watch, so please look into that. I have what is known as, if anybody's into education in the room, you'll understand EFD. So it's an executive function disorder. I cannot manage time. For years and years and years I thought I'd just crack at it, but I literally cannot manage it. I can go one way where I think I've got half an hour, I can go for a 5k run, do a shower and watch a catch up of Coronation Street, and I have no concept of it at all. So I work really well with a structure. So when I'm going to go with this story, I've had to change it quite rapidly over the last week because the situation I'm in means that I can't talk about my situation. But what I'm going to do is just go from my heart today. When I was about 5 or 6 years old, I wanted snow and there wasn't any, so I locked myself in the upstairs toilet. I opened the window and I got toilet paper and I made snow. And I had to call the fire brigade. It was like, if I'd have known then, like, how to get firemen to come and see you. Yeah, I made snow. I was quite rebellious. I had an older brother. I used to run around. We grew up in Brundle, so it was beautiful, beautiful space out there. I used to run around. I was quite a rebellious child, and I would stand up for what was wrong. I'd always come home with the knees out of my tights, and I was like a pretty tough kid. And that sort of got taken away with the circumstances with my dad, who was a deep sea diver, and he had a really serious accident when I was about 7, and he was in a diving bell, and I remember all we knew at that time was there are 3 men in a bell, and one of them's dead, and one of them's dad, and we didn't know, we had to wait. It wasn't dad, it was his best friend, but psychologically, for somebody to spend 3 whole days in a very small confined space with the body of your best friend, it turned him a little bit, and my dad didn't come back that day, somebody else did.
It's all right, darling.
It's all right.
Breathe.
I have a big question. Why do we do this when we cry?
Trying to put the tears back into your face.
So we'll be doing a lot of this today. So yeah, I can forgive him for what he became because he had a reason to do that. But it damaged who I wanted to become because I had to become somebody very, very different. So I carried on at school and I didn't do very well at school after that. But I loved my dancing and I wanted to be a dancer. Now back in those days, because I'm a little bit older than 35, back in those days, being a dancer was seen as, and I was sent to see a child psychologist. Why do you want to be a dancer? Why do I want to be a dancer? Because I was free. Dancing isn't something you do, it's what you are. And boy, I like to go back to those people now and say, I got to tour the world, I got to dance to princes, I got to see the world for free, I did cruise ships, I've been on top of the mountains in Elat in Israel, and I've watched the sun come up over the Red Sea and just gone, wow, I've seen that. I did get a verbal warning for it, what the heck. Verbal warning's gone now, but the memory of seeing the whole sea go bright red was just like, oh, just amazing. And I drank tea in a Bedouin tent and they're going to swap me for a camel and it was just...
Just one? One?
They had 2 humps.
Oh,
So off I went around the world, I came back and in, it was 1993 I met my ex-husband and we ran a pub together in North Norfolk and I had to stop the dancing because at 28 you get a little bit too old for dancing. I think that's because you get a little bit like, I'm sorry, I'm not doing an extra show for absolutely nothing, you're going to pay me for this. But they put it like, you're too old and injured. So then I met him and we married in 1998 when I was pregnant with my daughter. He'd already been violent, he'd already been abusive, and he did things which this day I can't get my head around, but I don't need to anymore, is he hid things from me to make me feel that there was something wrong with me. And I was like, crikey, you go for things they weren't there. But I left him on the 21st of January 2005 at 4:30 in the afternoon. My daughter and I were put in a safe house and we got away and I did it without telling anybody. I did it without turning to my family who had previously, when he was arrested, said, if you go through with this arrest, we don't want anything to do with you because we don't do this. So, because of what we did with my dad, we dealt with it in the home, we dealt with it with the villagers. We didn't go to the police when he was driving around drunk and trying to run us over. We didn't do that. So my family expected the same from me. So when I left him, I was not going to need anybody to do that because I needed to get out with my daughter safe. I didn't need anybody's permission and I would not ask for that this time. So after that, built my life up. I started working for Leeway in voluntary basis. I wrote a play called No More, and No More is set on a stage with 3 people. You've got the perpetrator, the victim and the child, because a child watching domestic violence has such an impact for the rest of their life that quite often they are the forgotten voice. Cheryl Booth wrote Legacy, it's called The Bitter Legacy, and it's on the Bananas website, and it's about how quite often a child watching abuse will go on to be an abuser, be abused, and also have learning difficulties. So 1 in 3 children with learning difficulties come from a background of violence. And we're not doing a lot to stop that in this country still. We still do not do enough. So moving swiftly on, we wrote No More, we performed it to magistrates in Norwich, and then the magistrates in Norwich went, we want to see this in the National Magistrate, so off we went to York, and right next to the racecourse. It was really good because you're like doing this dramatic thing and there's all these horses racing past, and brilliant movement. So there we were, we did it twice in a row. It was hugely empowering because at the end of the play we stayed in character and we had Q&A from the audience, so it was good for them to learn what it was like. And the question I was asked every time we performed this was, why don't you just leave? You just leave a queue when it's too long. You just leave a restaurant when the service is bad. You do not just leave your home. How can you just leave your home? How can people perceive that that is the answer to domestic violence? We just leave. It's just bizarre, and yet we still have that. So we made a lot of changes. Some of the courts have changed the rules that they had, so victims were kept separately, whereas before you had to sit in the waiting room being eyeballed. And they changed the way the judges reacted to them. When I was in court, one of the judges for my divorce, I represented myself, and one of the judges said to me, "Oh, please don't tell me all your evidence is a letter from your friend Leslie who says what a nice person you are and what a nasty person he is." So I just sat there and I went, well, no, actually I've got social services report, school report, police call out reports, blah, 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 blah. So, he backtracked a little bit then, and he allowed me to keep my DIY injunction. So after those years, I built myself up by empowering others. I forgot to empower me. Huge mistake. Because I then ended up just recently in another violent relationship. Only this time he twisted it and the police believed him, not me. So I was arrested twice, held in custody twice, treated as the perpetrator twice, before he finally turned. His confidence was so much that he thought he could do anything, call the police. Even when I had the injury, I was cuffed and arrested. Now, I don't want anyone to go away from here at all thinking do not dial 999 because that would happen. He had worked so hard on coercing my daughter, who was so close to me, into supporting his story. I was never charged with anything I was supposed to have done. I'm supposed to have put an RAF gunner in a headlock with a broken wrist. I'd like to see somebody try that. I think he'd be pretty ashamed as a gunner to actually have to bite his way out of that situation. But he finally went a little bit too far, and we are in Crown Court next week, which is why I can't talk too much about this situation. But when I sit on that stand next week, that's my truth. That's my truth. I am not on trial for this. He's on trial. I'm not on trial, and it will be my truth. And I have been fighting these past few months with the police to get an apology because they got it so wrong, and I'm not going to get it. And I have to accept that. I have to, because while I'm fighting to prove who I'm not, I've forgotten to be who I am. And I can't live like that anymore. So I burned all their letters, I put them on the fire, and I just sent them off because my truth is in here. And I learned that through tarot. It's about knowing thyself, knowing thy truth, starting off as a fool with nothing and going all the way through till you've got the world. And in the last couple of months, I've qualified as an NLP coach, a life coach, a hypnotherapist. I have letters after my name. And now I can empower myself. I really truly feel I can empower others. And part of my NLP course was actually having to work with people with trauma. And because I know trauma so badly, because every time he hurt me, every time I sleepwalk, so I wake up in the night and say, oh my God, you're a nutter, I'm ringing the police. I started to self-harm. So in my 50s, I started to self-harm. And so next week, I'm having my scars tattooed over, and they're going to be butterflies, which are going to symbolise that I've gone through the chrysalis and I'm now flying. So that's all good too, and they're going to be very pretty.
Yeah.
So that's why the beads are there, and it's not my shame. One thing that we feel when we're in a violent relationship is we're shamed. To be shamed as the abuser as well was too much for me, really too much. But I'm here today. And another reason I'm here today is last week when I found out some of the truths that had been said, because again my mother turned on me and my daughter was coerced into thinking that I was this horrible person, and we're all now healing and recovering. One of the things that shame cannot be given to you, you don't hold that. Shame is in their heads. It's what they feel they need to give you, whether it's because they get it wrong, whether it's because they want to abuse you and they want to have that control. Shame isn't in you, it's in somebody else. And one of the things I've also discovered is that little girl who sat on that windowsill throwing out toilet roll. I needed to connect with her because she's my inner child, and she's teaching me now, she's with me now. And another thing that helped me get through was my sisters. Is having people around, whereas before you get isolated, like we've been talking about with DV, it isolates you. I was in the car last week, desperate. Within moments I had people, come stay with me, I'll leave my flat so you can be on your own. I have huge people around me, So I'm writing a book at the moment. I've got 5 chapters done. Believe me, it's not about this story. It's set in a dystopian society and it's involving tarot and werewolves and stuff like that.